At first, everything seemed normal. A loyal German shepherd laid down in the quiet hush of her owner's living room, ready to give birth. He waited with quiet anticipation, heart full of hope, expecting the familiar sounds of tiny paws and soft, muffled whimpers. But the moment the first newborn emerged, a cold ripple of dread shot through him. The newborns didn't look like puppies. Their fur wasn't just pale. It shimmered unnaturally white under the dim lamplight, almost translucent. Their movements were stiff, then suddenly twitchy, as if their bodies hadn't yet learned how to exist in this world. And their cries, sharp, high-pitched, almost avian, cut through the silence like glass. Still, nothing prepared him for what happened next. Confused and trembling, he rushed them to the vet in the dead of night. Doctors gathered, whispering in urgent, hushed tones, their faces draining of color as they examined the litter. Then, one finally spoke the words that froze everyone in place. These aren't puppies. What they discovered that night sent shockwaves through the clinic, baffled scientists, and turned an ordinary birth into a story the world would never forget. If this story grips you, if it makes your heart race and your mind race faster, do me a favor. Hit like. Share this with someone who believes in the impossible. And subscribe for more tales that blur the line between mystery and miracle. And really, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments below. Last week, we had viewers from over 100 nations. Let's see how far this story travels tonight. The night had been still, the kind of silence that feels heavy, as though the world itself was holding its breath. In a modest home nestled at the edge of a pine-draped forest in Oregon, Marcus knelt beside his German shepherd, Nova, as she panted heavily on a nest of warm towels. She'd been restless all evening, pacing, her eyes darting to him with a look that seemed to say, "Stay with me." Marcus had prepared for weeks, bowls of water, emergency vet numbers pinned to the fridge, a heat lamp ready, but nothing in any book could have readied him for this. Nova wasn't just a dog. She was the last thread connecting him to his wife, who'd passed 2 years ago after a long illness. It was Nova who'd nudged him out of bed on his darkest mornings, who'd sat silently beside him during thunderstorms, who'd licked his tears away without judgment. Now, as her body tensed with each contraction, Marcus whispered softly, "I'm right here, girl. You're not alone." Her eyes locked onto his, full of trust, fear, and something deeper, something ancient. And then, with a shuddering cry, the first life arrived. The hours crawled by in a blur of sweat, whispered encouragement, and rising dread. Marcus watched, heart in his throat, as Nova pushed through wave after wave of pain. When the first newborn tumbled onto the blanket, he let out a shaky breath of relief, only for it to catch again. It was so small, barely the size of his palm, its body trembling under a coat of fur so white it seemed to shimmer. The second came quickly, then the third, each one more unsettling than the last. Their limbs moved in jerky bursts, their cries piercing and foreign. Marcus tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were premature, maybe albinism, maybe just unique. But deep down, a cold whisper curled in his gut. This isn't right. Nova, however, showed no hesitation. She cleaned each one with fierce tenderness, curling her body around them as if shielding them from the very air. Marcus reached out, fingers hovering above one tiny form. Its skin felt paper-thin, its heartbeat fluttering like a trapped bird. He pulled back, pulse racing. By dawn, he knew he couldn't wait. Something about these newborns defied everything he thought he knew about life, about dogs, about nature itself. The drive to the clinic was a nightmare of red lights and anxious glances. Nova sat in the crate beside him, eyes fixed on her litter, growling low whenever the car hit a bump. The newborn's cries echoed through the cabin, sharp, unnatural sounds that made Marcus's skin prickle. When he stepped into the waiting room, the chatter died instantly. A woman clutching a Persian cat backed away. A man with a terrier muttered to his wife, "What the hell is that noise?" The receptionist's eyes widened as Marcus set the crate on the counter. "Emergency," he said, voice cracking. "My dog just gave birth. But the puppies, they're not normal." Within seconds, a nurse ushered him to an exam room. Minutes later, Dr. Ellis entered. Calm, seasoned, the kind of vet who'd seen it all. But the moment he lifted the blanket and saw the litter, his composure faltered. He picked up one newborn, turning it gently under the light. Its fur gleamed like moonlight on snow. Its limbs twitched erratically. "This," he murmured, brow furrowed, "doesn't look right." Marcus's throat went dry. "What do you mean?" The doctor didn't answer immediately. He set the creature down, removed his gloves slowly, and met Marcus's eyes. Newborn German Shepherds don't look like this. Their fur, their cries, their bone structure, it's all wrong. I've never seen anything like it. Outside the exam room, whispers slithered through the hallway. Nurses exchanged glances. "Did you see them?" One hissed. "They don't look like dogs." Another replied, voice trembling. "I've worked here 15 years. Nothing like this." Marcus heard every word. He pressed his palms to his face, trying to steady his breathing. "Nova, no, Nova," nudged his knee, her amber eyes steady, unwavering. To her, there was no mystery. Only her babies. Only love. Dr. Ellis returned with 2 specialists from the university, geneticists in white coats who moved with clinical precision. They drew blood, took x-rays, spoke in clipped, urgent tones. On the monitor, the skeletal images flickered, spines too short, rib cages narrow, joints bending in ways no canine anatomy allowed. Their DNA, one specialist finally said, doesn't match any known canine species. There are sequences we can't identify. It's like something else is in there. Marcus staggered back. Something else? Like what? The doctor shook his head. We don't know. But whatever Nova gave birth to, it shouldn't exist. Within hours, the story leaked. A nurse's phone call. A bystander's video. By midday, news vans lined the street. Reporters shouted questions through the clinic doors. Online, theories exploded. Government experiments, alien hybrids, genetic mutations gone rogue. Strangers messaged Marcus. Are they dangerous? Is it contagious? Locals avoided him in the grocery store. One neighbor spat on his driveway. But inside the clinic, none of that mattered. Nova never left her litter's side. When a technician reached for one newborn, she bared her teeth with a growl so deep it vibrated in Marcus's chest. Her message was clear. Touch them, and you answer to me. Marcus watched her lick each tiny body, her devotion absolute. In that moment, he realized the world saw monsters, but Nova saw only her children. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only truth that mattered. Days turned into weeks. Tests came back inconclusive. Scientists begged to study them. Animal control hinted at quarantine. But Marcus refused. They stay with her, he told Dr. Ellis firmly. The vet nodded, eyes softening. She's the only reason they're alive. Without her instinct, they wouldn't have made it past the first night. And it was true. Despite their fragility, the newborns thrived. Not because of medicine, but because of a mother's relentless love. Their cries grew softer. Their movements less erratic. They still weren't puppies, not by any biological definition, but they were alive. And they were loved. One evening, as sunset painted the sky in gold and violet, Marcus carried Nova and her litter out the clinic's back door, avoiding the cameras. At home, he laid them in their old corner. Nova curled around them instantly, her breathing steady, her eyes calm. Marcus knelt beside her, tears finally spilling over. You changed everything, he whispered. Not just for him, but for anyone who ever doubted that love could defy logic, science, even nature itself. The world might never understand what Nova brought into this world. But in that quiet house, under fading light, the only thing that mattered was this: she loved them. And sometimes, that's the greatest miracle of all. The night had begun like any other. Cool air drifting through the open window. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the occasional rustle of leaves outside. But inside, tension coiled like a spring. Nova had been circling her nest for hours, her breathing shallow, her eyes wide with something Marcus couldn't name. He sat cross-legged beside her, stroking her fur, whispering reassurances he wasn't sure he believed. You've got this, girl, he murmured, voice trembling. I'm right here. She pressed her head against his knee, as if drawing strength from his presence. 2 years ago, when grief had nearly swallowed him whole after his wife's passing, it was Nova who'd pulled him back, nudging his hand, licking his tears, staying by his side through every sleepless night. Now, it was his turn to be her anchor. As her contractions intensified, Marcus felt his own fear rising. He'd read every book, watched every video, prepared every supply, but nothing could prepare him for the raw, primal intensity of birth. And then, just before midnight, it began. The first pup arrived with a soft cry that quickly turned sharp, almost metallic. Marcus's smile faltered. He leaned closer, heart pounding. The fur, so white it seemed to glow, was unlike anything he'd seen in a German Shepherd litter. The second came minutes later, twitching violently before settling into Nova's embrace. The third followed, its limbs jerking in odd, disjointed rhythms. Marcus's hands shook as he reached for a towel. "It's okay," he whispered, more to himself than to them. But doubt crept in like fog. These weren't just unusual puppies. They were wrong. Yet Nova didn't flinch. She cleaned each one with unwavering focus, her tongue gentle, her body forming a protective circle around them. In her eyes, there was no confusion, only pure, unshakable maternal instinct. Marcus sat back, exhausted, watching as the newborns squirmed against her warmth. Their cries echoed through the room, high, piercing, alien. He swallowed hard. Something inside him knew. This was only the beginning. By dawn, Marcus couldn't wait another hour. He wrapped the litter in soft blankets, placed them carefully in Nova's travel crate, and carried them to the car. Nova growled softly as he lifted one, her ears flattening, but she trusted him. The drive to the clinic felt endless. Every bump in the road made his stomach lurch. When he arrived, the waiting room fell silent. People stared. A nurse rushed him to the back without a word. Dr. Ellis, a man with 25 years of experience and a reputation for calm under pressure, took one look at the litter and went pale. He examined them in silence, his fingers tracing their fragile spines, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "Their bones," he finally said, voice low, "aren't shaped right." Marcus's breath caught. "Are they sick?" The doctor shook his head slowly. "Sick? Maybe. But this is something else." He called in a geneticist from the state university. Within hours, blood was drawn, X-rays taken, DNA samples sealed in vials. The results would take days, but the truth was already clear in their eyes. These creatures defied classification. News spread faster than Marcus could contain it. By noon, his phone buzzed nonstop, friends, reporters, strangers demanding answers. Outside the clinic, cameras flashed. Inside, staff whispered behind closed doors. "They don't look like dogs," one nurse said. "I've never seen anything like it," another replied. Marcus sat alone in the exam room. Nova pressed against his leg, her eyes never leaving her babies. He felt like a pariah, a man guarding a secret the world wasn't ready for. But Nova? She remained calm, devoted, her love untouched by fear or judgment. In her, Marcus saw the purest form of acceptance, love without conditions, without questions. And in that moment, he made a silent vow. No matter what they were, he would protect them. Because if Nova could love them without hesitation, who was he to doubt? Weeks passed in a blur of tests, hushed consultations, and sleepless nights. The genetic report confirmed the impossible: 78% canine DNA, and 22% unknown. No match in any global database. Not wolf, not fox, not any known mammal. One scientist suggested spontaneous evolutionary mutation. Another whispered about edited biology. But Marcus stopped listening to theories. He watched Nova nurse her strange children, her body worn but resolute. He saw the newborns grow stronger, not because of science, but because of her. Their cries softened. Their movements became less erratic. They still weren't puppies, but they were alive. And they were hers. When Dr. Ellis finally said, "You can take them home," Marcus didn't hesitate. He left through the back entrance, avoiding the cameras, carrying Nova and her litter into the quiet dawn. Back in his living room, the same place where it all began, Marcus laid them down gently. Nova curled around them instantly, her breathing steady, her eyes calm. The sun rose outside, painting the walls in warm gold. Marcus knelt beside her, tears streaming down his face. "You taught me something," he whispered. "Love doesn't need to understand. It just needs to be." The world might never know what Nova gave birth to. Scientists might spend lifetimes searching for answers. But in that quiet house, none of it mattered. Because love had already won. And sometimes, that's the only miracle we need. The story of Nova and her impossible litter didn't end with answers. It ended with acceptance. Marcus never learned what they truly were. Maybe they were a fluke of nature. Maybe they were something the world wasn't meant to see. But one truth remained unshaken. Nova loved them without question. And in a world obsessed with labels, logic, and fear of the unknown, that love became the most powerful force of all. Today, they live quietly in the Oregon woods. Nova, her strange children, and the man who chose compassion over curiosity. Their story reminds us that sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only cherished.